you enjoy content like this, please like and subscribe for more.
Well, welcome back to Faith and Cigars. And so the NFL preseason kicks off, so I'm sporting my colors. And I'm out here in my mobile cigar lounge, which is exciting. And so today we'll be talking about faith and cigars. And I'll be telling some of my story, I guess. And I'll be smoking, which I've referred to in the past. Let's see if I get that to focus. This is the Oscar Superfly. And man, this is a good cigar. It smells wonderful. This is a dark Mexican San Andreas wrapper, Maduro wrapper. I guess the binder is Honduran, and it's like a 3-country region blend of tobacco for the filler. And it's handmade in Honduras. So anyway, today my cutter, I don't have my Father's Day present cutter. So today I have my Wise Man Foundation cigar cutter. And so I like this one because it has a back, so I don't end up cutting too deep. But now that I'm getting more experienced in cigars, I don't make that mistake so often. I have made that mistake where I've cut it too deep, and then I end up damaging the cigar, and it unravels, and I hate that. But as I start my story, I'm thinking about, the beginnings. I think about significant events. And, when we smoke a cigar, we think about, the 3/3 of a cigar. And I guess life is like that. You got a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And I guess I'm starting to end. I'm getting towards the end of the middle part. But my life has definitely been ever evolving. I've grown and changed as a person. And so I think that's a good thing, right? Man, I like that. I like how smoky it is. Again, I'm in my mobile cigar lounge, and there's a breeze, and sometimes that makes it hard for the cigars to burn even. But I'll do my best to keep it burning even. And I really like this Oscar Superfly cigar. Its build is full, and it starts off like medium full. Man, that's really a good smoke. Well, to begin my story, like I said, I'm from California. I suppose that's redundant to say that, but I grew up in Redding, California. Well, actually outside of Redding in a town called Anderson. My mom is from a mountain town in California, and Bernie, California. You can look it up. There's Bernie Falls. It was absolutely the most beautiful landscape in the world. And then my dad was born and raised in Anderson. And so, of course, their family migrated to California for various reasons. Not that it matters. My dad's family's from Boston and Maine, and my mom's family is from Ohio. At any rate, so we grew up. I grew up in Anderson, and I had a good childhood for the first 9 years of my life. It was great. We had the run of the neighborhood. Family was poor. I remember my mom and dad fighting about money, but we never went without. And I had a good childhood. My brother and I, like I said, we had the run of the neighborhood. We weren't quite Huckleberry Finn, but pretty close. And but we had a good childhood, but we weren't necessarily religious. Mom and dad got burned pretty bad in a church when I was a baby, and so we just stopped going to church. And so, but it wasn't like, God was devoid from the house or anything like that. But we just weren't church going people. And I would go to like VBS. For you uninitiated, that's Vacation Bible School. And man, the thing I pick up on that cigar is that it ends with the sweetness, and there's not a spice to this as I begin it. Like you'd expect with the Maduro cigar to have a little spice to it, a little bite, but nothing so far. But so anyway, we were poor. We'd go to church occasionally with, like babysitters would take us or whatever. But then my dad had a coworker who was a youth pastor at a Little's Assemblies of God church in Reading. And so he invited some of the neighborhood kids. So my friend Kathy, who lived a couple houses down, and I was about 7 years old. We went, and I remember riding in his little pickup truck, and he had kids about our age. So we went, and I remember this one particular Sunday. It was a summer day. It was beautiful. I remember the pastor giving a salvation message about being born again. And in my little 7-year-old mind, I comprehended what he meant by being born again. And then he said, does anyone want to get saved? Does any children want to come down and get saved? And my friend Kathy and I, we went to the front. I remember the pastor sat down on the stage, and we sat on his knees, and we received Jesus. And so that was my first encounter with God. I remember, a tangible experience. Apparently, my mom says I had a sensitivity to God as a child, but I don't remember. But so anyway, but that same summer, another significant event happened in my life, and these would be like the Twin Towers that would play a predominant role in my life, and that was I was introduced to pornography. And neighborhood kid, his dad had it, and then I found a magazine, because this is back way before the internet. I found on the ground was an adult magazine, and that would burn into my heart, my life. So Jesus took root, and so did porn. Well, those twin events, those twin things, I guess the question would be, why would I come on the internet and be so vulnerable? Well, because if we hide our scars, and if we hide our pain, and we hide what Jesus has done for us, that makes it easier for other people to hide. But when we bring our darkness into the light, it makes it easier for other people to share their story. And that's what I want to do. I want to enjoy a good cigar and tell a good story. And I think the story of recovery. And who am I, right? I'm some hack in Southern Indiana. But when we share our stories, it makes it easier for other people to share their stories. And there's power in that. And so that's what I hope to accomplish. I asked Jesus in my heart when I was 7, but the way life goes, I didn't consistently go with my dad's friend to church, and I wasn't like consistently at 7, accessing porn, but those were seeds that would grow in my life, and they would have competing agendas in my life as well, as you can imagine. So anyway, like I said, we were poor, and then Dad got a job in Sacramento working for the state of California. Well, he was already working for the state, but this was a much upgraded position. It was actually working for it was a pretty cool job, and he ended up doing some pretty neat things in his career. He was a biologist for the state. So at any rate, so we moved to Sacramento when I was 9. And I remember before we moved, I had my 9th birthday, and I remember getting Transformers for presents, and then my dad went ahead and spent a month or whatever, and then my mom went for a couple weeks to get things ready for us. We stayed back 2 weeks, and with friends, and then we moved. I remember the day that we moved. I remember my dad packing up. I heard Dad packing up. I remember driving in we had a little gold Corolla. I remember crossing the Sacramento River into Sacramento and being excited for our new chapter. And I think we all were. And so we rented a house in a little town called Carmichael, California, from a coworker of my dad, someone that he knew. And the thing that stood out, she was a fellow biologist. The thing that stood out to me is that she had out in her backyard a snapping turtle. And I remember my dad feeding that thing chicken livers. And so, but those years in Carmichael were good years. We had good neighbors. My brother, who's 4 years older than me, my only sibling, he made friends. He was in junior high and I was in 4th grade. I was making friends, and that was good. Well, I mean, we were renting from someone's house. And so that was their furnishings. And so, of course, and my parents, they wanted to buy a home. And so they did. They ended up buying a home in a neighboring suburb of Sacramento. And that's when the trouble really began. So we moved to a town called Citrus Heights. And so you could look it up. And my parents bought a brand new house. And I remember it was freshly built. We would drive by, we'd watch the foundation getting laid, and then we would watch the frame come up. And then when it was built, Dad went in and installed curtains. And the day that I went with them, the day that we did that, they were installing the carpet. And that was, it was kind of cool to see the house get built and dream about what rooms we would get. And my brother was like, I'm going to get this room because it's the bigger room. And of course he won because he was bigger and older. But that second move really impacted my brother, and so he went off the rails. He became very angry, and he got addicted. He started doing drugs, and he became violent. And I could tell stories, and that just, but when you have an addict in the house and a violent person, that disrupts the family system, right? So 7 was a significant event, and then 7 years later, when I was 14, was another significant event, and it involves Jesus and pain as well. So that summer, before my freshman year, my brother, I don't know what drugs he did, but he ended up melting his brain is the best way I can describe it. And it was horrible. That summer was horrible. My brother was extremely violent. The house was just chaotic. And he was bringing drugs in the house, and my dad was traveling all the time for his job. And anyway, it all came to a head. We ended up having to call 911 this one day because it was just so bad. And so the Sac sheriff came and they arrested him on a 5150. So if you ever hear 5150, that just means that's it's a hold. It's a psychiatric hold for someone for 72 hours because they're a danger to themselves or others. And so Mark, my brother, ends up at a local mental facility, Sutter Psych, I think is what it's called now. I don't remember what it's called then, and boy, those were miserable days, man. And it robbed my dad of his steel. His man. It fundamentally changed my dad, and so and it changed me, and it changed our family dynamic, and so. This finishes with a sweetness. And like I said earlier, this Maduro, it doesn't have that spice that you would think from a full-body cigar. Maybe it's just the way my palate's picking things up, but I get the sweetness. And I know it's advertised as like a medium to full or full-bodied cigar. I just don't get that on the smoke, even on the retro hell. My game of so my brother he gets arrested 5150, and my parents become codependent on my brother, and that became a nightmare for me for the next 4 years or so of my life. It was bad, and that really would set a foundation for my heart, But the other event that happened when I was 14 was I got my mom said that's it. Our house was chaos. My brother was a living nightmare, and I was going the same way. I was angry and bitter. I was getting into fights, and I hadn't been exposed to drugs. I watched my brother's stupidity, and I didn't have any desire to do drugs. And so anyway, so my mom's coworker went to this little church, and that's the wrapper. That is, oh, upside down. That's a cool wrapper, 70s disco, and man, that is really good. I have not smoked the lighter version of this cigar, by the way, because I like the Maduro. But in the last draw and retro hell, I did get that spice. It did linger on my tongue. Man, that's good stuff. Well, anyway, so my brother's arrested, and I'm going the same way. My mom says that's it. So we go back to church. But her coworker invited her to this little church in a little country town in the suburbs of Sacramento, and so we went to this little country church, and I remember sensing the Lord, and then I know I needed God. And I guess I kind of just assumed my belief in God. I don't know how to describe that when you're 14 and all the craziness is going on when you're 14. It's puberty, got this chaos in the house, and so my pastor at that time, he invites me. He says, "Hey, I need another camp counselor for junior camp, 4th to 6th grade." And interestingly, it was right around the 14th of August that happened. That's right before school starts. And so I go, oh yeah, I have nothing else to do. I don't know what a camp counselor does. And so I get paired up with an older guy, and I'm kind of like a counselor in training / co-counselor. And really, the gentleman I was paired up with, he was doing activities of some sort. And so I moved the kids around. I functioned as the counselor, and he just kind of gave me guidance and oversight as I needed it. Well, anyway, on Thursday, we were singing Arky Arky, and the guy singing the song, leading the worship, he was like he's pushed from behind, and then it was like this wave of God just poured out on the camp. Kids were crying, and I was bawling my eyes out. I didn't know what the heck was going on because I never really encountered anything like that. And in the denomination I grew up in, we are not Pentecostal. We're Pentecostal in name only, but functionally we function more like Baptists. So anyway, the Holy Spirit's poured out, and man, my life is just transformed. And now let me unpack that, what I mean by transformed. My life was going this way, and God righted that path. And he told me in that moment, 1, that he was real, and 2, that he loved me. And that message would play an overarching theme in my life, moments where I would be reminded of that. And my problems weren't solved. My brother didn't suddenly become like this functioning, sober person. It was still chaotic. Lots of pain and issues that were going on in the house. What I want to part with in my story is that the darkness and the light sometimes coexist, and they're at war with each other. And the darkness in my life was trying to control me, and the light was rescuing me. And there's no other two ways about that. I look back on those years as a young kid, those 4 years of high school, and I see the providential hand of God preserving me and protecting me. And so even though I had this secret dark passenger, the light, which is God, was with me and protecting me. And so I learned some things. I learned about God. I learned that God loved me. I learned that God was real. but I learned how to hide, and I learned how to have a secret. And so that's what I want to conclude. And so I've enjoyed this Superfly. I'll show you the label. It's very good. Let's see if camera will focus here. That is a really good cigar. And so I highly recommend it. I love everything I've smoked of Oscar. They have one called the Leaf. I like both versions of that. I like the Maduro better. So anyway, tell me what some of your cigars are, and tell me about your God moments. Show me about the time that God has showed up in your life, and or maybe you have disappointment with God, maybe you have church hurt, and we'll talk about that too, because church hurt is real, and so a lot of people get hurt in church and they walk away from the faith, and I have some sympathy for that, some empathy, because I mean, churches can really mess you up. But anyway, I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to hear what your favorite cigars are. Maybe you like the lighter cigar. Give me some recommendations for some lighter cigars. Love to hear your story. Anyway, God bless, and remember, faith in cigars.